Good evening. This is Perrysburg City Council meeting of December 1st, 2020. Amber, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bourne?
Here.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Ms. Materney?
Here.
Mr. Matuzak?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Van Nuzen?
Here.
Thank you. If you're able, please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, the minutes of council meeting from November 17th.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have the meeting minutes here from November 17th, and hearing no communication on these meeting minutes, I will move to approve the meeting minutes of the City Council meeting held on November 17th, 2020 as written and dispense with their reading.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Nuzen?
Yes.
Thank you. We have no special reports today. Letters, communication, and citizen concerns. So, nobody come up to the podium. Administrative report. Just want to give a shout out to the street. All our departments, of course, worked hard this year, but just recently the street crews have been out plowing snow and getting the streets ready for the storm. And then they worked very diligently to pick up the leaves, so there's hardly a leaf left in town that hasn't had a chance to be scooped up by the crews, so I want to recognize them for their hard work. And have no other report. The administration has sent to council a plan for going forward regarding minutes of committee meetings. We think that's a good resolution. Council members can continue to report out, because that's clearly within the council rules and within the prerogative of a council member. We think that will make sure that the minutes are consistent with Ohio Sunshine Law. So we've sent, attorney sent that to you guys last week. Having nothing else, city administrator?
No report?
Acting finance director?
No report?
Well done. Director of law?
No report?
President of council?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a couple of things to report on. Unfortunately, or fortunately for one of our council members here, who is going to be moving on as he won his election here for county recorder. So again, congratulations, Jim, on the win.
Thank you.
Did hand over to me here his notice that he will be resigning from council at the end of this year, on December 31st, 2020. So with that, we know that we have a time limit that will be starting at that moment on finding a replacement. And I was hoping we could have a short discussion or brief discussion on how we will do that in the timeline as we move forward to look for an appointment until the next election, which will be this upcoming year as well.
President Smith, I'd like to say I am both happy and sad about Councilman and former Council President Jim Matuzak leaving council. I've enjoyed working with him.
Thank you.
And I wish him all the best, but I will miss you.
You say
Thank
that
you.
now.
We'll be going for drinks later, Jim. What are you talking about? So with that, I know we have I believe it's a 45-day timeline that we're going to have a replacement. I believe that clock starts on the 31st once his resignation becomes into effect. So what I'm hoping that we might be able to do is plan ahead instead of rushing through after the first of the year or after the holidays to try to get this timeline down and have that discussion on how we're going to set this up. I'm sure we're going to probably have to have a special council meeting in order to make the appointment and have a timeline set for our residents to put in their name for consideration for the seat. My suggestion and thought is kind of looking here towards the future, if I may. Let me get the calendar the right dates here. Is that we could even start it from now until say the second week of January to accept resumes. Resumes or applications, whatever preferred. I would hope that we could utilize the administration within the HR department possibly as a way to to drop those off. But the problem that we have is no one can just easily come in here
Right.
to drop off the resumes at this time. And so I don't know if there's a Dropbox or a place that we could designate that they could come into and
We can do that, and we can also, they can submit them electronically. We're happy to help however council prefers to just be the administrative source to collect the information.
Yes, we're currently using the Income Tax Department's Dropbox for all documents. So that can certainly be utilized, and we can have our PIO, whatever council decides is the method and means to replace Mr. Matuzak. We can certainly push that information out. I can talk to our HR manager tomorrow to see if there's an application process that might be able to assist council with that. Or we've done, as you may recall in the past, we've utilized the citizen volunteer form for the process as well. So we can assist council.
Whatever council wants.
My thought is that we can either take a resume or the volunteer form. I think keep it as simple as possible. There's no need to make it as complex.
Yeah, whatever council wants to
And
do.
then my hope would be is possibly, we take it from the 1st to the 15th of January, say. We have the next council meeting on the 19th. We could either do that the same day, which I don't know if anybody, depending on how many we have, that might not be a good idea. Or we could do that on, say, January 20th, the following day after the council meeting, to convene to have the applicants do what we did the last time with a 5-minute talk and an introduction of themselves. We convene into an executive session and come back out and go and start to conduct the vote, just to make sure we have the process procedure down.
I think the January 20th might be a good idea.
I hear one for the 20th.
That's a Wednesday?
Wednesday, yes.
Okay.
Does that seem to work for everybody right now?
I think that's a good time frame.
Corey? I see everyone shaking their head but Corey.
So
Let me
that means
see.
just one council meeting
The hope is to be only one council meeting out of,
without it.
yeah.
Do you want to give it to administration so we can get it out to the media tomorrow morning?
This thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
His
unless-
resignation?
Yeah, just so we can scan it and get it to Roger and other people who are gonna
Yeah, that's
want. Unless you want to do it.
No, you made the offer.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Can I rewrite that then?
Can't take it back.
Okay, very good. We will scan it and send it to the media.
So we'll put down, Corey, is that
Yeah,
good for
that's
you?
fine.
So, say 6:30, same time? You think that would give enough time for everyone to hopefully be able to make it to that? Sorry, I'm adding it to my calendar here. So again, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but I will just say that we would like to encourage anybody and everybody to put their name in. This is a great opportunity for anybody who's interested to get a chance to make their voice heard and come in and do something for the city. So hopefully we'll hear from quite a few residents that are interested, and we'd love to hear from everybody. So with that, the next one I want to get
Be a
this.
long night.
What's that?
If you hear from everybody, it'll be a long night.
No, it very well could be. Maybe I should be careful what I wish for, right? Sorry, I just gotta get this on the calendar, because if I don't want to miss that day. All right, so, with that being said, I know, the mayor had mentioned earlier as well about some questions on the meeting minutes or committee reports from the committee level. And I guess there was some questions that had been brought up through the safety committee. I'm looking at the members of the safety committee on that, on what the proper procedures are. And I'm hoping that us as a council can come up with a good answer. I know, Kate, you had sent over an opinion to us, and hopefully maybe you can kind of elaborate on your search on that as well. So to make a long story short, there were some questions regarding the committee report versus the committee meeting minutes, and what would be required for approval and not for approval, and what is a report and what's a meeting minutes. So hopefully, Kate, you can kind of elaborate on your research and give us Well, you thought, and then Lee is kind of going to discuss on how we want to proceed.
Okay. My original take was that this issue had been resolved previously, that the chairpersons would bring their report to the council meeting following their committee, present it as an oral report, and take their typewritten report to the following committee meeting to be voted on as minutes. I know that that was the impression that several council members had, but not what several other council members had. And it was never officially, I would agree, voted on or decided that that was the process. That's what I took away from the meeting.
Okay, let me ask you, you list various options here. If we want, as chairman of a respective committee, to do just what you just said, that's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. What I've done is I have researched the law regarding minutes and meetings. The Ohio Open Meetings Act states very clearly that every public meeting and a committee meeting is a public meeting, must maintain minutes. Those minutes must be accurate and they must be made part of the record. I believe that accuracy means that they can be voted upon. I also understand that our code specifically says that a chairperson is responsible for a committee report. There is nothing that says that that report cannot be the minutes. However, if the chairperson prefers to type their own report, present the report to council, and have that made part of the record of council as the chairperson's report, there is also nothing in the law that says we can't do it that way. And take the minutes that are created, usually by Mary Jo, to the next committee and vote on those minutes. There is no reason that we can't have it both ways. That is, as your law director and your legal advisor, what I would recommend we do. If, as a chairperson, you want to take those minutes, bring them as your report, submit them as typewritten report, and have them voted on, there is nothing wrong with that plan. If you prefer to make a chairperson's report that is not voted on by your committee, that is also acceptable. The minutes that were created by Mary Jo will be taken to the committee and voted on as the minutes, and they will be the minutes that are the record. Both are perfectly acceptable resolutions to this conflict. Yes, Mr. Matuzak.
Okay. This is the email that you sent out.
I have that in front of me.
Okay, and I would suggest that a committee report and the minutes from the committee meeting do not have to be one and the same, because
Correct.
based on the information that you gave us, the committee minutes have a threshold that they have to meet. And you didn't mention this, so I would also offer up that the reports that I've seen since I've been on council rarely meet that threshold to be minutes, okay? And it says, those minutes are not required to be a verbatim transcript of the proceedings, which we've been told, but they must include enough facts and information to permit the public to understand and appreciate the rationale behind the public body's decisions, which they rarely do. They just state, you know, so-and-so presented this, we talked about this, there was discussion, period. There was nothing in, there's rarely, I'm not saying there isn't, but there's oftentimes they lack enough facts and information to permit the public to understand the committee, to understand and appreciate the committee's rationale behind its decisions. So if a report is drafted, which is the responsibility of the committee chairman, and it doesn't meet that threshold, then you can't vote on it and make it the minutes, because it doesn't meet the threshold for being minutes under the Ohio Open Meetings Act.
I agree with what you're saying. You're taking my suggestion and reversing it.
Well, kind of, I'm just saying, you don't have to necessarily take that report and vote on it, and therefore it somehow transforms into minutes,
Correct.
because it might not have,
I would take the minutes that are created, and if you want to make those a report, it can go in that direction. I agree with what you're saying, that a report would not necessarily go the other direction.
right, so that being the case, if a committee member submits a report, which that committee member, the chairman, is responsible for, and it doesn't meet that threshold, and that committee chairperson doesn't intend for it to meet that threshold, then there's no point on voting on it and converting it to minutes. That just means a separate document has got to be created by the committee to be the minutes. And I don't think it
Correct.
says anywhere in our rules that is the responsibility of the chairperson to draft the minutes of the committee. It says the report, which is
Correct.
separate and distinct from the minutes.
Correct.
So anything that's been done so far as a report, I think is fine, but as a practical matter, I don't think we've ever really had minutes that meet this threshold.
Correct. And the idea is that Mary Jo's minutes will go from one committee meeting.
Her
where they're
report,
taken-
her report, or her minutes. It's
Her
one.
minutes.
Okay, so she's gonna draft minutes.
She will draft minutes.
Okay,
They will go from the meeting she was in, where she took the minutes, to the following committee meeting, where they can be voted on. So if, for instance, you are on that committee and you feel that there's some portion that doesn't meet the threshold, something that needs to be added, the minutes can be voted on to be amended and then voted on to be passed. What we are suggesting is that some city council members don't want to, prefer to use the minutes as their report, so that,
that's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we're in agreement.
Yeah, it's just,
Don't think so.
there are exceptions. There's a little flexibility there.
Right, absolutely.
So let me ask you this then, or for council. So let's say chairperson wants to write a report, to report on their committee meeting, and it's never intended to be their minutes. Does that report get included with the city council minutes that get approved as the council, that chairperson's report?
Yes, because it is a public record and a public document. It would become the chairperson's report, which is what is required of the code. If another committee member has an objection, they are welcome to put on the record and have it become part of the minutes that they
Okay.
object, but that report would become part of the
Okay,
record.
and so just to be the devil's advocate, let's say someone takes exception with that chairperson's report and says it's not accurate. You're telling us the minutes have to be accurate. Does the
Yeah.
report too have to be accurate? Is there anything in here that says the report has to be accurate?
No, what I'm saying
Okay.
is that there can be an objection, the record can reflect the objection, but the chairperson's report with the record reflecting the objection will become part of the minutes because it's the
Okay,
chairperson's
so the report that the chairperson drafts, if they choose to submit it in written form,
which they're required to.
the report is required to be written.
It is,
Okay, so if
according
they
to
submit that, and other committee members or other council members that were present at the committee object that it doesn't include everything that it should be in there, or includes things that weren't necessarily said or taken place, it still gets attached to the council minutes as drafted, and then the council minutes will include language relative to the objections of council members.
Yes,
Sounds good to me, that's my opinion.
Well, Kate, the way I understand it, and I've said before, is if you give the report, as mentioned in the rules of council, I think it's 220.5 off the top of my head, and it talks about it's the personal responsibility of the committee chair to give the report and send that written report to council. I think that this sounds like we're doing a lot of double work here, rather than just doing the report that we should be doing and then doing as we've been doing before. It's going to put us backwards, I think, on getting things done rather than moving forward a month behind.
so there's no reason when the report is presented by the chair that all of the legislative matters in that report cannot be voted on by city council. There's nothing that prohibits that. The minutes are just a record. They
Right.
don't have to be passed before you can go forward with the information that is coming from the committee. They're just a record for the committee for future generations, so that in 15 years we look back and say, what did that crazy lawyer say? So it doesn't put us behind in any way, because the report presented by the chairperson will include all legislation, everything that happens can still take place in the council meeting that immediately follows that city council, that committee meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that it's supposed to be a report.
Yes. But there also has to be minutes by state law. It's required. So the chairperson creates a report. State law requires that we have minutes from every public hearing that we have. Our code does not trump state law. So while our code requires a committee chair to create a report, Sunshine Law requires that we have minutes from every council, committee, every public meeting that we have where we have a majority. So these are two separate ideas that are taking place between what the city of Perrysburg asks of its chairperson and what state law asks of public hearings.
Yeah, and my concern, as I mentioned at the safety committee meeting, I had mentioned to you, is I'm concerned about, 30, looking back at some of the, I did a little research about 30, you're going to say about 30 years basically is null and void, because that's how they've been doing it with a written report.
Just correct it going forward. That's all you can do.
Yes, we just simply want to follow the law and do it the correct way as we move forward.
So if I make a suggestion, I would, I know quite a few of us use Mary Jo's anyways, and make adjustments to them, and once she submits them to us and use the reports, I would suggest that we consider those minutes as we present them to council. It would be a report, but it's up to each individual person how they want to, each committee, I guess, on what they're going to vote on, but I believe that we need to have meeting minutes and reports are separate from those meeting minutes, and if the committee chair wants to use the meeting minutes as a report, they can utilize that as a report, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to do what I've always done, and I'll
Yeah.
follow the procedure we agreed on last time to have the committee approve the minutes.
Yeah.
Tim, I think you often.
And I
verbally-
do want to note for the record, I don't agree with Jim's assertion that our minutes have not met the threshold. I think
No, I-
our minutes,
I would
I've
say that-
researched issues
Yeah.
in various
Well-
areas, and I go back through the minutes, I understand why council did what they did, and
Yeah.
I think our minutes.
And a lot of times you verbally explain your rationale, how you reached your conclusions, but they're not necessarily always in your report itself, because you like to explain yourself. So I'm not saying no one ever does it, it's just we haven't necessarily met that threshold every time, so. Probably some more than others.
I think it's just something to be aware of moving forward, that if there's a question, that maybe it's something to be addressed in the report when approving it at the actual committee level. But for me, what we receive as I use as a report would be the same thing I would be using as the minutes, but if there's something that needs to be clarified, we can work on that in the committee level at that point, so. So just to make sure everyone's in agreement here moving forward, is that,
Well, I would like to make one mention, President Smith, as well. We should also remember that no one can really change a committee chair or woman's report. They can give the report, you can disagree with it, but you can't change the report. Just wanted to get that out there.
So just for clarification, as your legal advisor, there's nothing in the code that actually says you can't do that. As a compromise, my suggestion is that that is not done, and that the record reflect the objections to the report, but that since the minutes will be what are now keeping the history of the meetings, that can be where changes are made at the committee level for those minutes.
so just to make sure that everyone's under the same impression, is that each committee meeting, there will be meeting minutes that will be voted on and approved on top of the report, which could be different than what is actually given as a report to council. So
Understood.
everyone's in agreement on that, correct?
No.
Yep, I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. I don't think they have anything else in my report, but I'll make sure to try to make it long on my next one.
We'll give you more time, Mike,
Give
time
you
if you need
another
it.
half hour.
Hey, give me about 15 minutes, I'll come up with something
All
else.
right, very good.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mayor Meckin. I do not have a report because we have not met since the last council meeting. Our next council meeting is a week from tonight at 5:30, if we need to have one at that point. That's when it would be scheduled.
You don't want to go out with a whimper.
What?
You don't want to go out with a whimper.
I'll be here if anyone else shows up, you know.
We have to have one, so we'll be here
Okay, all right,
per code.
okay. Committee meeting? The committee meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about council meeting.
Yeah, no,
I
The
apologize.
committee meeting, okay. See, I was listening.
Yeah.
I was paying attention. I don't want to go out with a whimper. But I do have a piece of legislation tonight that we're all familiar with. And at the last council meeting, I asked if anyone had any proposed modifications to the proposed budget that Mayor Mackin has given us, to please contact me or President Smith or the administration with those proposed changes. And I personally have not heard from anybody. So I'm just going to introduce the legislation as provided to me by the administration. So I would like to introduce ordinance 22, 2020, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second.
Roll call?
Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 22, 2020, making appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. I move that ordinance 22, 2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second?
Discussion?
So one, it's not really a discussion, but just a reminder for, as we're moving forward the second budget discussion. The Perrysburg Historic, the Perrysburg Heights Center, the funds that we've set aside, again, I'd just like to encourage to have those set aside separately from where council is voting our entire budget away on a yearly basis. And I would also like to hear from them if the administration would mind reaching out to see how things are going for them during this
They'd
COVID.
be happy to, I spoke to their representative, Paul Vazas, and he'd be happy to come make a presentation. And
Perfect.
we can, with the amended budget, better check with Dave, but he's not here, but we'll put a line item for that. If
Okay.
that'd be acceptable to council.
Perfect. And then I know I did confirm with Dave as well. It looks like that $844,000 from the Bureau of Workers' Comp is definitely coming from the state. And one of the things I would just like to encourage the administration to do, I know that's going to be again in the amended budget because it hasn't actually arrived yet, but to utilize that to try to finish paying off the fire department.
We're, as you know, we're about approximately 4% below anticipated budget. But as you also know, and I know that the finance committee knows that this administration, and when I was on council, paying down the debt as soon as possible was always a priority, and we had anticipated doing that, but for COVID this year. So we're certainly I'm not going to lock in completely on that, but yes, we're totally committed to paying down the debt as soon as possible.
Perfect. All right. That's it for me on that one.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Oh, Mayor, are we going to have a breakdown, and I could possibly ask Jim this question as well. Are we going to have a breakdown of how the COVID monies are spent or the CARES monies are spent? Because we were told at our finance committee meetings this year that we were going to have breakdowns of that. I've not seen that yet.
Bridget had prepared a nice spreadsheet a couple months ago of where we stood year to date on how it's been spent. If you could just update that. Yeah, just update it. Okay. That'll answer all your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mayor, that is all I have.
Thank you, Chair of the Finance Committee, and we appreciate your efforts regarding the budget. All righty. Your next meeting is you already said that, right?
Yep.
All right, very good. Service Committee?
I have no report. We haven't met. Our next meeting is Thursday, December 10th at 5:30.
Okay, thank you. Safety Committee?
Thank you, Your Honor. The Safety Committee met on November 24th and was called to order at 6:15 PM. Committee members present were Deborah Bourne, Jim Matuzak, and Barry Van Huzen. Also present were Bridget Cabot, Kate Sandrado, Police Chief Pat Jones and Fire Chief Rudy Ruiz. So we had a lengthy conversation regarding committee minutes, which we tabled or did not act upon, and chose to bring that discussion back to City Council, which we just had. Purchase of a new medic unit. Fire Chief Rudy Ruiz was present to request approval of a contract with PennCare to purchase a new medic unit. The cost of the Braun Chief LX Ford F-550 4x4 with gas chassis is not to exceed $249,937. This will be replacing a unit with over 120,000 miles. This will also be considered a third unit as a replacement, third medic unit as a backup. The purchase was approved 3-0. Update on House Bill 669, which was voted upon and approved by the legislature. Basically just keeps what we currently are doing as a temporary basis, which the sales of alcoholic beverages on the to go, and expands the liquor permit to include outdoor seating. In the House Bill 6, which would be continuous until December 31st of 2022. House Bill 674 was passed, but is sitting in the Senate, and it's a little more, it is similar to the DORA agreement, or what DORA represents. Additional crosswalk at Fort Meigs Road. I had indicated that through the rec committee, there was conversation regarding connecting Rotary and Rivercrest Park, and as Police Chief Jones indicated, it just is, we would not, we cannot have a stop sign at that location, but that we all recognize that there may be pedestrian issues whether we create a crosswalk or not. So there just is not room for a crosswalk at that connecting parking lot of Rivercrest and then the grassy area of Rotary. So we will keep an eye on that. So we adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Our next meeting will be on December 22nd at 6 p.m. I do have one resolution to be read. And I would like to introduce Resolution 59-2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Nugent?
Yes.
Resolution 59, 2020, a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with PennCare not to exceed $249,937 for the purchase of a Braun Chief XL Ford F-550 4x4 gasoline chassis for the Perrysburg Fire Division and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 59-2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second. Sorry.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Nugent?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Recreation Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no legislation this evening, and we have not met since our last meeting. Tuesday, December 8th is our meeting at 6:30. That's if we do have some items on the agenda. Thank you.
Planning and zoning?
No report, Your Honor. We meet again on, let me think how, December 9 at 5:30 p.m. And then I would like to introduce ordinance numbers 23 and 24, 2020, and move to, that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Ordinance 23, 2020, amending codified zoning ordinance 1215.02180 of the City of Perrysburg zoning code to allow for the keeping of hens within the City of Perrysburg.
Nothing further.
Thank you very much.
One more, ordinance 24,
Oh.
2020.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amending codified zoning ordinance 1225.08 of the City of Perrysburg zoning code to allow for the keeping of hens within the City of Perrysburg.
Now I have nothing further.
Okay, we're still okay with that. Okay, these will be moved for passage next meeting.
December 9th at 5:30.
Maybe December 15th.
The next council meeting, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, next council meeting, you're gonna move for passage.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Today, the administration has not heard any comment. Well, that was one of the
Okay.
reasons we were
Okay.
we were allowing it,
That's
so.
good to know.
Okay, personnel.
All right, we had a meeting on November 24th, 2020. Present were myself, Jim Matuzak, Tim McCarthy, the city administrator, and the law director. We had discussion regarding proposed code of conduct for city council. I actually have legislation on that tonight that I'd like to introduce. The committee reviewed the latest draft of the legislation establishing the code of conduct for city council members. Ms. Sandretto stated that the legislation includes language addressing frivolous charges. The committee recommended changes to the proposed legislation, including a section on treatment of the public. Mr. Kuhlman said that he would like to move this on to city council and do a first reading at the next meeting. Committee unanimously agreed to forward the legislation on to city council. So while I have that topic up, I'll go ahead and I would like to introduce ordinance 25, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 25, 2020, an ordinance amending the city administrative code, Title 4, Chapter 20, by adding Rule 8 to subsection 220.05, creating a code of conduct for city council.
Okay, we then reviewed proposed repeals and updates for section 266 of the administrative code. That's going to be a bulk of our legislation tonight. Ms. Cabot reviewed proposed repeals and updates for section 266 of the code. She said that the language proposed to be changed is either covered by contract or is in the employee handbook or needs to match what is in the handbook or is no longer relevant. There was discussion regarding the probationary period and reduction of compensatory time permitted to be used each year for non-bargaining unit employees. Ms. Cabot explained that in some cases, there's only one person doing a particular job, and the more time off the employee takes, the more the city may need to contract with outside firms to cover their absence. The committee unanimously agreed to recommend approval of the proposed changes to section 266. Ms. Cabot distributed the next set of proposed changes to section 266 to the committee for discussion at the next committee meeting. On other business, Mr. Coleman asked if the city engineer's position will be discussed at a future meeting. Ms. Cabot said it will be, and they are in the process of gathering information. There's no further business. That meeting was adjourned at 6:07 p.m. The next meeting is Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020 at 5 p.m. And I have quite a few pieces of legislation to introduce. I've already been asked to separate those out. So I would like to introduce ordinance 26, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 26, 2020, repealing codified ordinance 266.02-2 of the City of Perrysburg Personnel Code previously enacted by ordinance 105, 1991, and passed on November 5th, 1991.
I move that ordinance 26, 2020 be passed.
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes. I would like to introduce ordinance 27, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 27, 2020, repealing codified ordinance 266.02-3 of the City of Perrysburg Personnel Code previously enacted by ordinance 119, 2015, and passed on December 15th, 2015.
I move that ordinance 27, 2020 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce ordinance 28, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 28, 2020, amending codified ordinance 266.04-2 of the City of Perrysburg Personnel Code.
I move that ordinance 28, 2020 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Only 3 more to go. I would like to introduce ordinance 29, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 29, 2020 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
I have to read the title.
Oh, sorry.
Ordinance 29, 2020, amending codified ordinances 266.04-4 of the City of
had it right the
Perrysburg
first time.
Personnel Code.
That was probably me. I move that ordinance 29, 2020
She wants
be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to introduce ordinance 30, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 30, 2020, repealing codified ordinance 266.05-1 of the City of Perrysburg Personnel Code previously enacted by ordinance 110, 2003 and passed June 17, 2003.
I move that ordinance 30, 2020 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
All right. I would like to introduce, last but not least, ordinance 31, 2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance 31, 2020, amending codified ordinance 266.05-3 of the City of Perrysburg Personnel Code.
I move that ordinance 31, 2020 be passed.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a question. Do they currently now don't allow exempt and non-bargaining units to accumulate?
No, we do allow, but we have had up to 160 hours, and we only have one employee who's over the 80 hours, so we are changing it to, so that it matches our personnel policy.
Do you pay people if they don't use it in the year, or how does that work with exempt and non-bargaining?
Gene here.
Excuse me, Mr. Attorney, I couldn't hear the question.
If you, if I'm an exempt employee, I get 80 hours of comp time in a year, I don't use it, do I just lose it at the end of that year?
No, there's a section of the codified ordinance, it's the second to last section or sentence. It gives the ability to cash out 40 hours of accumulated compensatory time 2 times in a calendar year. So they have 2 opportunities in which to cash it out if they believe they cannot use it.
And I also know that there's a, how does that align with the federal regulations and guidelines for exempt employees?
According to our labor attorney, it meets all of those requirements. And then the collective bargaining agreements all have their own section of compensatory time.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the difference. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. Matusek?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Public utilities. Anything else you want to cover?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was reaching in here trying to see if I could read a book for you all tonight, but unfortunately I can't find anything that would be entertaining enough. But I do not have a report here today. Our next scheduled meeting is December 10th at 6 p.m. And I'm sure that we'll have some stuff to discuss then, so
Very good.
thank you, Your Honor.
Any other business to come before council?
I know that there is something that Mr. Matusek wanted to, at least a couple items he wanted to bring up here.
Couple items. The first, I'll bring up the one that I think will take the least amount of time to go over first. I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but I would say that if you left your house this weekend, you couldn't have not noticed it. There were signs plastered all over town for Obamacare with phone numbers, and they were nailed to telephone poles, zip tied to speed limit signs, pounded in the ground everywhere. And each corner had about 8 of them because they were one-sided signs, so they put 2 at each corner for 8, and they were everywhere. And I know the city was called about it, but it was a holiday weekend and it didn't happen, so I was curious what was going to happen. And Monday morning when I came to work early, every single one of them was gone. So there was an orchestrated effort by somebody to go out Friday after the city crews go home, plaster these signs everywhere, and then get them down before Monday. And I don't know if there's something we can do to prevent that from happening. I mean, they were everywhere. And secondly, I would like to ask our law director, what if someone like myself just decided they were going to go out and take them all down? Is there any exposure to me or anyone else from doing that?
Technically, that's theft
Theft of what?
of the sign.
Can you come up with stuff?
Yeah.
Technically, that's theft of the sign. I would not recommend that as a citizen. If they are on government property where they do not belong, we as the government have the right, collectively
Yeah.
to remove those signs. If you're asking me if you as city council member can remove them, I would ask that you allow service to do that simply because that's the division that removes signs generally. And I would not want you as a citizen to have, as a
Okay.
council person or a citizen, to have to take on any argument if
Right.
somebody was objecting to your.
But given the fact that they wait until Friday after the service crews are going home for the weekend, and they get them up under the cover of darkness and get them down under the cover of darkness and accomplish exactly what they want to accomplish by using not just city but state signs, they succeed at what they're doing. What can we do to keep that from happening?
I don't have a brilliant answer for
I
you.
didn't expect you to have a brilliant answer
Here's
tonight,
the
but
question with that, and could, you know who it is, you have the phone number, could you not?
called that number. The person that answers the phone says they're just an answering service. They have no idea who does that.
Okay.
I didn't expect to get an answer
I
on the
was gonna say,
phone.
because you could easily charge overtime to the individuals to have them.
Somebody's responsible
Okay,
for it, and somebody knows what they're doing. It was very well orchestrated.
I do know for signs on the right of way for ODOT, it carries fines. They're rarely enforced.
Well, they were all over 25. They were all over
Yeah,
the
they're
diversion
rarely
diamond.
enforced, but there are fines attached.
So I think it would be worth our time to find out who did it. I
I-
still have one of
we
those
can- we
signs.
can
There was
take a
one
look.
placed on my property, and I took it.
I was gonna ask about that, like, if your property on 20,
Yep.
and it's on your yard, why can't you take it down?
I did.
Take that, absolutely. That's his, but that's his private property. You can take.
I did
We
that.
we will talk about it.
Because something's got to be done
Yeah.
to let them know that was the first and the last time you do that. and anyone else that does it, you know, because we could do that with campaign signs, and that would get way out of control. I did it once, and mine ended up in the garbage.
You never did it again.
I guess that was theft, too.
No, on government property, we're left to.
Okay, all
It
right.
was worth it.
You also had to give them back to me, but you didn't. You threw them away.
As
So-
I recall, there was a.
Not you, but there are rules on what you have to do with them, and you didn't
Yeah,
do what you were
we
supposed to
will,
do.
we will talk about it at staff meeting.
Okay, so I just think we should do something to deter that from happening again in the future.
As I recall, Jim, I think it was a 248 area code, and I'm guessing that's out of someplace in Detroit.
Yeah, I don't-
Because I remember seeing them too, wondering why they
I'll
were
have
up.
to look, I'll have to look at my souvenir and see what it says.
They're incurring liability. It's very illegal to put them on a regulatory sign.
I mean, they had zip ties that were 3 feet round to get them on some of these corner posts. I mean, they came prepared.
Okay,
So-
we'll work on that.
So that was my first one. If someone could do something about that, that would be great. My second one, I don't expect any answers tonight on this. I just wanted to kind of get the ball rolling. And I think, Tim, you're aware of the issue. Jan, I know you're aware of it. And Jonathan, you're aware of it. But we've got the Planning Commission, in their July 30th, 2020 report, minutes, whatever we want to call them. On page 7, no, on page 8 and page 9, they had a site plan amendment for Barney's Inc. on Dixie Highway, also known as BP, and what's soon to be a Starbucks, and the curb cut on Echo Junction Road. And I've talked to another property owner in the area. I think everyone that knows anything about it knows what I'm talking about, that has an issue with it. And regardless of the fact that this guy has an issue with it, it sounds like the Planning Commission approved a site plan amendment contrary to the recommendation of the administration, the engineering division, and the planning and zoning department, and passed it anyway. And I think it presents arguably a safety concern for the city of Perrysburg. And so since the planning, I don't know what the answer to this is, but since the Planning Commission passed something, is there a remedy that either the city or city council, the administration or city council can do to perhaps amend the decision to further restrict the turning in and out of the new curb cut that's been proposed? Because it potentially creates a safety issue. Not potentially, I think the data that we have, that I've been shown, says it's definitely going to exacerbate an already unsafe intersection.
So I actually have researched this issue.
Okay.
The answer is that under the code and all law that I can find, council cannot simply arbitrarily review a decision by planning commission. Planning commission has to be appealed by a party who has standing within 30 days. So if, say, this had been denied, then the party who was seeking the plan could have appealed to city council regarding that issue. The neighboring property, if they could establish that they had standing in some way, and simply being a neighboring property does not by itself establish standing, but then under Ohio law, but the neighboring property, if they could establish standing, could have also appealed within 30 days. Now that we are beyond that 30-day appeal window, we can't unring that bell. That doesn't mean that the administration isn't aware of the concerns and evaluating options for, it's Echo Junction Road, right?
Yeah.
Echo Junction Road regarding how we will maintain citizen safety once these curb cuts are put in across from each other. And we are evaluating those options.
Yeah, because they're not across from each other.
Yeah, they're not.
And set off,
Yeah.
yeah, set off.
Which is the issue.
Set off from each other. So we are evaluating ways for us to keep the citizens safe in a manner that doesn't go back and unring the bell we can't unring.
So the rules that say that we can't do what you just said we can't do, are those rules that were passed by city council?
Yes,
So city council can change the rules, correct?
but it's not retroactive. So if you change the rules, that's fine going forward for other incidents. changing of rules of city council do not retroactively affect things that have happened in the
Okay,
past.
but it's worth noting that if you don't want to get in this situation again, perhaps something could be changed in the rules so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where a planning commission or any commission, which doesn't always include people with expertise in the area that they're looking at, make a decision to do something that puts the administration, the city, the mayor who runs the city in a situation where there's potentially created a safety hazard and liability, that something should happen.
I am more than willing to sit down with any council member.
I mean, it's,
There was also, part of that was, and I'm not, I just know that when that was put in place, Tim and I were both on council, that there was a lot of politicization of decisions. And so part of the goal of that was to make, give the planning commission some authority to be insulated from politicalness of decisions. And so that the decision is made based on recommendations, and that committee then had some autonomy so that they wouldn't always have to be looked at. I'm not saying that that's something that shouldn't be reconsidered.
No,
or
it's
have to be
well
reconsidered,
intended.
But that's certainly the factor, and the property owner which you speak has been in constant contact with the administration about his concerns, and so we are aware of his concerns and his legitimate, his concerns.
So-
We're working with them, I guess.
and just to be clear, I'm not as concerned about his concerns.
Right.
It's the
It's
policy
the
issue.
actual safety.
Right.
And I mean, I live down that street, so I go through that all the time, and it just gets bottlenecked when somebody wants to take a left turn when there's a queue of cars, and they can't, so they wait. And it gets
Yeah.
backed up, and this is just gonna further,
Well, it also, there's some concerns about what he's asking too, I guess I would.
yeah, I'm not sure what he's asking
Yeah,
for, but
yeah, yeah.
if there's a safety issue and the city's aware of it, then
Yeah.
it seems like we should do something about it.
Currently, we are aware of the current safety issue with the BP station prior to renovations, with the curb cuts that was on Nickel Junction that was closest to the intersection. There were issues there. We are anticipating that we could have additional issues, even though that curb cut's getting closed off.
And moved, right.
A new one's gonna be added, slightly offset from the drive coming out of River Place. We're monitoring the situation. We'll be watching it carefully, coming up with options that are tools in our toolbox to mitigate any safety concerns that we see. And we'll see those through, unfortunately, crash reports, most likely. But that entity that is doing that building, they actually have a certified traffic impact study that indicates that there will not be a problem. And I think that is something that the Plan Commission looked at and took into consideration when they made their decision.
How old was the study?
Recent.
Yeah, it's very
And,
recent.
when did, I'm familiar with traffic studies, and, a lot of it is, I'd be curious as to what time periods those studies were
I can
done.
certainly forward that study to you. I have a copy of it.
Because traffic studies can be easily manipulated.
And again, I think that is one of the items that the Plan Commission weighed. Administration did put their reasoning and concerns in the report that they give to Plan Commission. And Plan Commission chose not to take the administration's position on that.
Which is a shame, because they're not gonna pay for the liability issues involved if there's a lawsuit against the city, which all of this could have been easily cured with a right in, right out.
Which I think is what the city advised.
Yes, that was our recommendation.
That's a poorly planned.
So at some point, I mean, I understand Mr. Mackin's explanation as why the rules are the way they are, because they were
Right.
well intended.
We
They
can
were to
review
prevent-
it.
They were prevent from getting political, but if somebody, I don't want to say negligent, but they just make a bad decision and it exposes the city, there's got to be some way that the city can remedy that and limit that exposure, if not get rid of it. Otherwise, we've got a real issue here. So.
Yes, our prior law director looked at the issue with myself, planning and zoning administrator, the police chief, and Ms. Sandretto confirmed what Ms. Alkire had researched as well. So, this definitely could be an issue, but we've been discussing ways in which we could take action if and when we see that concern has actually materialized.
I think it will be an issue. I don't
So,
think anybody
Bridget, if
should-
I can just ask a question, because when I heard about this, it made me think of west-south boundary in front of Mr. Freeze. And that process involved ODOT, and it involved the service committee. And ODOT's been involved all the way up and down, you know, Costco, they were heavily involved at that very same intersection. So how did this, how is this different?
So this is different because they're not making any modifications on State Route 25. So they've not made any request to modify the access that they currently have on State Route 25.
But are they
All
touching,
access is strictly on city streets.
but are they gonna be redoing the driveway on State Route 25?
No,
They're not gonna fix it, they're not gonna
I
repair it,
don't
they're not
believe,
touching
I don't
it?
believe that they are, according to the
Because-
site plan that I've seen.
Because if they even repair it, or upgrade it, or fix it, or tear it out, they need a permit.
And that would be something they would have to deal directly with ODOT with, that would not be part of our process. The other intersection improvements that you mentioned, Councilman Van Huzen, those actually had ODOT funding. So when you have an ODOT if you have a project that has ODOT funding, they actually have to review the plans and approve the plans. So in this instance, there was no plans for them to review or approve. It was a private project, appears to be wholly on their private property, without making any modification to their access on State Route 25.
So, and I understand the political impact, you know, when influences can come into play, but Tim and Tom, when the decision was made to make the plan commission in charge of these decisions, I mean, who are they responsible to? Because this is, to me, it's all about safety,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's how we, and I'm just curious as to, who are they responsible for? To?
Well, I mean, ultimately, they're appointed by the mayor and approved by council. And I suppose in time, you could remove them. Now, Kate alluded to an appeal process. I can't recall, but is there an appeal process where the planning commission site plan review decision can come up to council
No,
if it's appealed?
it's a legitimate appeal to,
To court?
yeah.
Okay.
Council first.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Council sits as the first level of appeal. It's like, when something happens with HLC. Council sits as the first, jurisdiction for appeal,
Mhm.
but you have to be, either the party who who requested the plan, or a party who has standing.
Right.
For the appeal, and it has to be within 30 days.
Right.
So yes, there
But
is
if
an appeal.
a neighboring property that would suffer damage arguably would have standing, and again, hindsight's 2020, any situation like this, the property owner who would be aggrieved had a right to appeal to council and chose not to do that.
Absolutely.
But the city did not have any recourse. If the administration, the city engineer feels as though it's unsafe, this decision is taken out of their hands, right? Is that?
Well, but I think what Bridget said is also true. If it proves out, as some suspect, that there are traffic issues out there, then there's corrective steps we can.
There are remedies available to the city to improve the safety of that portion of Fort Meigs Road.
Yeah, but I think I understand what Mr. Van Huzen is asking is if we see an issue and we know it ahead of time, why wait until someone gets hurt?
Exactly.
You can't appeal to yourselves,
Well, there's also,
so.
And I understand, but it's an appointed body that maybe there needs to be some addition, if there's a legitimate concern, is there some other recourse that could be had instead of waiting until someone's actually hurt?
the other thing is, the administration made certain recommendations based on its opinion and view, and traffic studies can be interpreted, there is a legitimate argument that there isn't one. So the inference that it's inherently dangerous, while I get the point, is not necessarily supported by traffic study and other documentation. So
You a lawyer?
again, planning commission made a reasonable judgment, not,
And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
second guess the planning commission because I don't have all the details in front of myself on it. However, I think that this is a good conversation that we should be having. What happens if a majority of council, and I know that there's some up here who think that this is something that maybe should be looked at a little more closely, and it wasn't like it was a unanimous vote by the planning commission
Certainly was not.
either. Not to mention a couple were missing on there.
Correct.
It would be helpful to have some sort of remedy that the city can say, hey, it wasn't unanimous. Maybe it's something that should be looked at a little more closely before we give the,
And you look at the expertise of those that voted for and against it. Beatty was for it, he's an engineer, I believe.
Right.
Pickerel,
Architect.
he's an architect. Stout, he's HR management in the healthcare administration. Mitchell said no. Anyone know what Mitchell does for?
Yeah, she's, works
She-
with Teamacog.
She's Teamacog, which, is that, she should know, she said no. Wellstein, I know who he is, but what does he really do? I mean,
Real estate, isn't he?
he's a real
Real
estate.
Yeah,
estate.
real estate,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it sounds like we have qualified people on the commission.
We have pretty good planning.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see my letter, we get good people.
Yeah.
But you gotta ask yourself, people that should know say no, and the administration says no, and, Easterling says no, and then they go and do the opposite thing. You wonder if maybe it was political,
Anyway, but we're happy to review it, have it at next planning zoning, I guess would be the best place to have a further discussion if that's council's preference.
About the structural issue of how you can deal with this, or,
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah. I don't think we'll get there next week on it, but
Well, yeah, at some point for next year, that'd be
Yeah.
something.
it's not like this is something that occurs often, but
Right.
for those one-off instances where there might be a legitimate concern, there's no reason, if there's concerns from our engineer and our staff on something, especially when it comes to safety, maybe it's something that should be reviewed by safety. I don't know, but hopefully planning and zoning, at some point, and obviously I'm not gonna make you do it. I don't think any of us want you to crash course into this, the next one, but, at some point, I think this would be a good thing to take up in 2021.
Sure, Tom and Tim, you guys are probably familiar with when you see contracts and they, towards the end of the contract where they talk about dispute resolution, you have arbitrations and both sides will pick an appraiser and you'll get 3 appraisers and you'll do this. You could structure something like that in this so that an outside, objective, unbiased
Have a
third party would be
tiebreaker.
hired between the commission and the administration to render an opinion on it. So both sides are kind of equally getting an objective opinion and
Which
they're
is
agreeing
essentially
that
what's
whatever.
kind of happening informally now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because there's much discussion about a variety of issues there
okay.
between all the
All right, then I'll
parties.
just stop where I'm at. Then, so,
Yeah.
okay, appreciate it.
But no, that's good. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no objection, we're adjourned. Yeah.
Yeah, I
You
know,
didn't even get a
I know,
chance to read it.
Oh, I just
I
want to
don't
make
know,
sure
we
we
may
have
be able to
copies.